Did you know that 15% of the population lives in first world countries? Some examples of first world countries include the United States and Australia. The terms first world, second world, and third world were introduced during the Cold War. First world referred to countries that were aligned to the United States. Second world countries were countries aligned to the Soviet Union. And third world countries were referred to as countries that were not aligned to either side of the war. Now, third world countries are referred to as developing countries, which have low gross domestic product per capita and rely heavily on agriculture as the primary industry. In this image, this illustrates on the left a developed country and on the right a developing country. Good morning. My name is Luke Easterling, and I have researched to what extent have developed countries positively impacted third world countries in the fields of politics, economy, and health since 1940. I have found sufficient evidence that explains that developing countries have positively impacted third world countries in all three areas since 1940. Developed countries influence peace and order in developing countries. The Bretton Woods Agreement, passed in 1944 by 44 allied countries, was put into place to safeguard populations from threats to peace. Additionally, it promoted economic cooperation among nations, strengthening relationships for trade. Another positive result of this agreement was the creation of an international currency exchange, which helped regulate and promote globalization and international trade across borders. The United Nations was formed in 1945, following World War II, to promote peace. The United Nations is now made up of 193 member states, including both those considered developed and developing countries. Funding is provided by those members for peacekeeping, peace building, conflict prevention, and humanitarian assistance. As shown on this graph, of the top 10 contributors to United Nations, the U.S. contributes the most, almost double actually. Of the top 10 contributing countries, 8 of them are developed countries, while only 2, China and Russia, are still considered developing countries. This illustrates that developed countries are assisting developing countries with monetary support through the UN. One example of the UN's efforts to benefit developing countries was when they led the way to resolve the problem of conflict diamonds and partnered with the global diamond industry to develop a long-term solution to the thorny ethical trading problem and promote peace and stability in former conflict countries like Angola. Trade between developing and developed countries has greatly impacted developing countries. The World Trade Organization launched the Aid for Trade initiative in 2005 to focus support on developing countries, particularly the least developed of them, in building trade capacity, infrastructure, and the ability to benefit from trade opportunities. This graph represents the overall global aid for trade dispersed from 2006 to 2017, which has amounted to an overall $409 billion. 27% of that, which is $108.5 billion, has gone to least developed countries. This is an illustration on how developed countries are supporting developing countries in the area of trade. Additional ways to promote growth in developing countries is to eliminate or reduce tariffs and promote free trade. In keeping with this, the head of the World Trade Organization proposed the elimination of tariffs on all imports from the world's 50 poorest countries. This is ideal, even if the tariffs are reduced by a little bit, which, for example, in East Asia, a reduction of the tariff from 30 to 10% over the past 20 years has led to economic success. Historically, no country has achieved economic success without being open to trade with the rest of the world. The key for developing countries is to have trade reform to provide strategic trade agreements with developing countries. The UN provides an important role for this. Sports have a huge benefit for developing countries in the area of trade, economics, and peace. Nelson Mandela inspired a movement when he said, "Sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does." Some health benefits include the release of endorphins, which are beneficial both physically and mentally to the body. Activity benefits overall health and also gives opportunity to learn valuable life skills such as teamwork, self-confidence, and communication. These skills benefit not only the individual, but the community around them. In addition, there are economic benefits from sports in developing countries, which include opportunities for jobs. Finally, sports can be used as a vehicle to address social and humanitarian issues, including health and peace in communities. Although developing countries can benefit from the support of developed countries, there are some limitations they can experience. Globalization can negatively impact developing countries as they lack the infrastructure needed to manage it, and it can amplify the existing inequalities in a poor country, including income and education. Free trade is necessary historically for developing countries and third world countries, for development of third world countries. But it also has limitations, which include a risk of failure for small businesses, outsourcing, and overuse or abuse of natural resources, which can lead to an environmental problem. These issues must be considered by those who are looking to help developing countries succeed. Through this research, I found sufficient evidence that developing countries have positively impacted developing countries in the fields of politics, economy, and health since 1940. Peace is guided to countries through the influence of developed nations and in conjunction with the United Nations. Improving the quality of trade deals for developing countries allows them to be closer to economic prosperity of developed countries. Sports can provide mental and physical health benefits to citizens in third world countries, as well as positive economic changes and social aspects to the community. With a focused energy, developed countries can continue to create positive impacts on the overall quality of life for citizens for developing countries. These are my citations. Any questions?
I do have two questions for you. First question, how valid and reliable were the sources you used, and then how do you know they were?
Some of the reliable sources that I used was the United Nations, which is a internationally trusted organization, and I found this information using the College Board searching engine of EBSCO. So using that search engine, I would know that the sources are reliable.
And if you had more time, what additional research would you conduct on this issue?
If I had additional time to research this issue, I would go more into the environmental effects, because I address the political, health, and economic issues, but the economic or environmental effects can greatly impact everyone.